Hello and welcome to the Chapter 7 Trustee Administrative Guidelines. These guidelines were developed by Chapter 7 Trustee Gerald Davis for the Southern District of California. They became effective in 2008. Failing to follow these guidelines will likely result in your case being trailed to the end of the calendar, or continued altogether. If your meeting is continued, the debtor's attorney is responsible for serving notice of the continued meeting on all creditors. The guidelines begin by reviewing the 341A meeting of creditor requirements. The debtor and the debtor's spouse, if filing jointly, are required to appear at the meeting unless excused by the U.S. trustee. The debtors must bring a government-issued photo ID like a driver's license and their Social Security card. Consider making copies of these identification cards at the time of signing the legal services agreement for your file. Acceptable alternatives for proof of Social Security number would be a W-2, a 1099, or a paycheck, which includes the debtor's full Social Security number. Attorneys and pro se debtors who require an alternate meeting must make arrangements through the U.S. trustee. The attorney is required to physically be present at the alternate meeting with a questionnaire executed by the debtor. If for some reason you need to reschedule your 341A meeting, you need to call or email your individual trustee. Most trustees do not have a problem with rescheduling the meeting. Others refuse to reschedule even with good cause. A bankruptcy information sheet is provided at the 341A meeting and is required to be read by the debtor prior to being called by the trustee. The information sheet explains the different chapters available to them. If they filed a Chapter 7, they may be able to convert to another chapter, that the bankruptcy may be reported on their credit report, and it discusses what a discharge is and how it operates. On the second page, it explains reaffirmation agreements. Review it with your client, answer any questions they may have. The trustee will ask the debtor if they have read the document and understand its contents. The trustee requires a summary of the debtor's income for the 6 months prior to filing the petition. Your bankruptcy software includes the summary as an attachment to Form B-22. If the summary was not submitted with Form B-22, you must submit the current monthly income details for the debtor using the form attached as Exhibit A. To enable the trustee to fully analyze the business operations of the self-employed small business debtor, submit the gross business income and expenses for the past 6 months using Exhibit A1 in addition to the Form B-22 attachment. Business and consumer debts and expenses need to be separated. You will find a large percentage of self-employed debtors intermingle their personal and business expenses. The debtor will need to go through all his expenses and debts and indicate which ones are personal and which ones are business. The guideline documents are used in the Southern District to provide more uniformity among trustees so debtors and their attorneys are not left guessing each individual trustee's preferences. The guideline is a comprehensive list of documents required to be submitted to the trustee of each bankruptcy case to allow the investigation of each debtor's financial affairs. Let's look at Exhibit B, the supporting document cover sheet, which is required to be used as the cover sheet of your trustee package. The cover sheet is a checklist of the documents you will be submitting. Use the checklist to collect your documentation and give a copy to your client. It is also recommended that you communicate the issues of the case to the trustee. This can be communicated on each item on the cover page or as separate cover pages for each section of the package. A PDF fillable cover sheet is available free of charge on the Bankruptcy Tech Case Management Forms page. The method of delivery is eDocs through the ECF homepage. Supporting documentation must be submitted no later than 14 days after the case is filed. Consider informing the clients that these documents are required to be submitted at the time of filing the petition. Submitting the trustee package at this time will save you from repeated phone calls to your client requesting these documents. It is much more difficult to collect these documents after the petition has been filed. Here we are again, proof of income. Provide the trustee copies of the debtor's pay advices for the 60 days prior to filing. Also provide an explanation of your calculations. The trustee will require additional pay advices received by the debtor after filing the petition through the date of the 341A meeting. Written documentation as to the basis of the vehicle value. The preferred form of valuation is Kelley Blue Book. The value from Kelley Blue Book should match the value stated on Schedule B and D. If it does not, provide an explanation on the summary sheet. Other resources for valuations for older vehicles or recreational vehicles is NADA. If you're having a difficult time finding a value for a vehicle, the trustee will accept local for sale ads on the same vehicle. Be sure to mention to the trustee on your summary sheet that you're having a hard time locating a value. Your package will include a copy of the current registration for each vehicle owned by the debtor. If the vehicle registration was renewed within 3 months prior to filing, communicate this to the trustee on your summary sheet. If nothing is owed on a vehicle, provide a copy of the certificate of title. For all other vehicles, provide proof of the payoff balance for each vehicle, which can usually be found on the monthly statement. If not, the debtor can call the creditors for a copy of the payment history and balance on the account. If the vehicle was purchased recently or registered in another state, provide a copy of the security agreement. You'll also need a copy of the declaration page of the vehicle insurance policy, which sets forth the period and the amount of coverage. Insurance cards are not acceptable. If the debtor's vehicle is not insured, advise them to obtain insurance before the 341A meeting. The trustee can demand the debtor hand the car keys over to the attorney. The debtor is not allowed to drive the vehicle until they provide the trustee evidence of insurance. The attorney will be asked to make arrangements to protect and store the vehicle. The value of real property. A broker's opinion is the preferred valuation method. Using Zillow and Mortgage.com is okay, but not always accurate. Provide copies of both to the trustee and indicate which value was used and why on the summary sheet. In the future, when market values begin to increase, Zillow values will not be accepted as a reliable source. Whenever possible, obtain a broker's opinion. You will need to provide the proof of payoff balance for all loans in the form of the most recent statement from the lenders. If the debtor has refinanced within the last 2 years, you will need to include closing documents. If there was a private lender, provide copies of the loan advance and a deed of trust. Provide the declaration page of the homeowner's insurance policy stating the period and extent of coverage. Personal property liens. Provide a copy of any UCC-1 security agreements filed with the Secretary of State. These are not common but should be investigated. Private lender documents of any loan advance and proof of balance in the form of the monthly statement. Financial account statements. Provide copies of bank statements to all bank accounts for the 2 months prior to filing. The debtor will also need to provide a current bank statement at the 341A meeting as well. For retirement accounts, provide copies of statements documenting the type of retirement account and evidence of the value of the account. This information can be found on the monthly or quarterly statement. Expenses in excess of the IRS mean test standards must have supporting documentation and brought to the 341A meeting. Provide receipts and the calculations used to arrive at these excess expenses. If the debtor cannot provide support for these excess expenses, the 341A meeting will be continued and Schedule J will have to be amended. Be very careful with excessive charitable contributions. The trustee will not allow more than the IRS standards. Provide a copy of the most recently filed tax return. If the debtor has not filed taxes for the past year, provide the year before. If tax filings are not current by the 341A meeting, you guessed it, the case will be continued and discharge will be delayed until they are filed. If you have a health care case, notify the trustee immediately upon filing. A married debtor filing without the spouse must elect to use the 704 exemptions unless a waiver is filed and served on the trustee. The mutual waiver of the right to claim state exemptions is attached as Exhibit C and must be filed with the petition. The trustee may require this waiver for couples that have been recently separated or recently divorced as well. The 341A questionnaire is attached as Exhibit D. This document is provided at the 341A meeting for the debtors to complete prior to being called by the trustee. It is to be signed by the debtor and the attorney. The attorney is to submit the questionnaire with the copies of the debtor's identification. There is a questionnaire specifically for corporations and partnerships and is attached as Exhibit E. If the debtor is an unincorporated self-employed business, you will need to provide a certificate of liability insurance in the trustee package. If it is not provided, the trustee will order the business operations to be suspended until insurance is obtained. The attorney must inform the trustee in writing within 24 hours of filing the petition and provide the following documents for all self-employed business cases: the fair market value of the assets, including leased assets, used in the operation of the business, evidence of current property or liability insurance, evidence of workman's comp insurance, evidence of errors and omissions insurance coverage, evidence of a reserved tax account for employee-employer taxes, the existence of any environmental, law enforcement, or federal agency or state regulatory issue that affect the business. All corporate business operations are to be terminated at the time of filing the petition. Inform the trustee within 24 hours of the identity and location of remaining assets of the corporation. Provide the contact information and keys for access to the business locations and storage locations. Provide contact information for secured creditors and landlords. Inform the trustee of the need for immediate action to preserve assets of the estate and the existence of environmental, law enforcement, or federal or state regulatory issues. In order for the trustee to conclude a corporation or partnership 341A meeting, the corporate records may be required for examination and should be made available if requested. Now that we've gathered all our documentation, which include proof of income, vehicle information, real estate documents, bank statements, retirement accounts, tax returns, and all other required documents, Enter the case information on the supporting documentation cover sheet. Attach your case summary of issues, and they are ready for submission through eDocs. Providing the trustee with complete and detailed information will enable your case to be quickly administered, and the debtor will receive a timely discharge.